And hello good people of the internet, it is I, Tommy Kelly, and this is Adventures in Woo. And on this very wet, rainy, dreary, grey day in Ireland, I want to talk a bit about a couple of books I've read recently. So welcome sadly to the car. Not the most aesthetically pleasing background. I had a full intention of going out to lovely different locales and locations around my vicinity, and the weather just let me down. It is Ireland, what did I expect? Well, the last couple of days has been, last couple of weeks, week and a half, has been lovely weather, really sunny, really bright, really kind of great weather for doing videos. But now it's back to the standard grey, overcast, windy, traditional Irish weather. But it is what it is. So while I am still in a kind of a nice locale, I'm outside a church in Kilcurry. It's a lovely church. I'm in a car park. All you can see is my messy car. So anyway, another thing I just want to say before we get into this, in that there's a kind of thing I have in my head about reviews. I don't like doing reviews. I don't, because I don't feel I have any sort of authority or qualification, or who am I to say anything about someone else's piece of art or whatever. You know, that's kind of it fits in my head. So I don't like doing reviews. But I also think there's a part thing that goes on that also means that, you know, everyone should have an opinion, or everyone's entitled to their opinion about certain books or whatever. But I just, you know, I'm going to talk about a couple of books that I've read, with the condition that, you know, make your own opinion up about these. I certainly don't have, you know, I'm not an authority in any of these things. So that's just, it's kind of reviews more. Here's what I thought about these books. Anyway, the first book I want to talk about is John Kehoe's Mind Power in the 21st Century. And this is really good. I came across John Kehoe. If he was in Ireland, he'd be called Kehoe. But from a YouTube channel called Vegetable Police, or Camera Conspiracies, and he talks about him a lot, in that the kind of principles that he uses from John Kehoe has changed his life. And they're all very kind of law of attraction and attraction-y, mental, psychological type things, with a fair bit of woo-woo in it. There's kind of these seven steps, I think, or 7 ideas that he has, that Vegetable Police talks about, that aren't actually in this book mentioned whatsoever. And they were kind of what interested me. So this book, in reality, is kind of just your bog standard law of attraction, you know, positive thinking, new thought type book. It's very good. It would be one that if someone hadn't thought, or you know, we were trying to introduce the topic to someone else, then it would certainly be a book that you would, you know, if your mum goes, oh, what is this law of attraction, what are these things, good book to give. It's well written, it's very, you know, the ideas are presented well, it's easy to read, all of those type things. It's just, it's an old enough book, I think. What year did it come out? 1987 originally. So things have moved on a bit, you know, there's probably more up-to-date type of things that you got, and in fact I will talk about one now in a second. So yeah, good, enjoyable. If you've already read a million law of attraction, psychological models, bordering on energy model type things, then you're not going to learn anything new from it. But look up his, I think there's 7 principles. I should really have known this beforehand. Of like, one of them, my brain is a send and receiving thing, and I'll link to them in the show description, and they're quite good and they're worth considering and stuff like that. But the problem we see is that you also have this book, which is Tufte De Priestess, and it's written by a guy called Vadim Zeland, who wrote Reality Transurfing. And the reason why I'm not talking about reality transurfing going to this is that the reality transurfing book I have has like the first 5 volumes combined, and I'm still only halfway through it. So it doesn't feel fair to give a full, or to give a review, given that I haven't finished the whole thing. So this is kind of what I was hoping the John Kehoe book would be. It's kind of the updated, extended, advanced, almost law of attraction type stuff, new thought type thing. Reality transurfing, for me, is the pinnacle of the law of attraction type stuff, or the mind manipulation stuff, or all is consciousness, all of that type of model. And actual reality transurfing books, brilliant, some great ideas about the whole pendulums, which are like certain, it's almost as if relationships can become egregores, or, you know, and this pendulum pulls you into the energy of these things, or you can have social stuff or political stuff or anything that kind of traps you within an energy. And we can feel this, like, of course, that, like, say there's a dynamic at work and there's a particular click, whatever way you want to pronounce that, and that it will have its own energy or its own egregore, and he calls these pendulums, which are kind of, it's a bit confusing at the beginning because the pendulum doesn't, you know, traditionally work in the way that, you know, this top, but it's a good word for it. The reality trance surfing stuff is great, and I really love it, and I think you should check it out if that kind of sounds like something you're into. This one is brilliant with a lot of conditions. For some reason, he's done this type of thing where he's written the book as if he's someone else. You know, it's not channeled as far as I can gather, or he's not saying it's channeled, but it's just Tufte De Priestess giving her wisdom in a very condescending, arrogant manner. You know, she's a lofty kind of looking down on people. She calls, you know, the reader snails, and, you know, is always berating the reader for being stupid and all of these type of things. So when you can get past that kind of aesthetic and that kind of coat that it's wearing, the actual tech in it is really, really good. There's a lot of it that when you're reading through it, you go, that's very usable, that's a great way of looking at it. And they're all kind of new twists on old ideas. So again, like an awful lot of the law of attraction stuff, we all know what it is. Like with the new thought stuff, is the principles aren't dramatically going to change. But sometimes I can find in this book, and particularly Reality Trance Surfing, the book itself, the main book, it presents these ideas in such a way that they become more usable, or I understand them, or see the kind of the principles are a bit more clearer behind them, or, you know, it's a bit more pragmatic or usable, I suppose, is the best thing. And then you just go, oh, I never thought of it that way, and that makes way more sense. And the reality trance surfing in general, to me, kind of has an answer for all of these things, all of these kind of questions that you have about the law of attraction type stuff. It has an answer. Now, like, it mightn't be a very satisfactory answer some of the times. Most of the time it is for me, and I can work within that model. But at least it is. It's not kind of going, you know, leaving things up to, I don't know, karma or that kind of rubbish that people can inject into all of these things, or the victim blaming or stuff like that. Although, of course, it's very hard not to touch on that. So the stuff in this that I found really good. This whole idea of the Plash, which is an energy point that you walk through and do all of these things through. That's new to me, and that seems to, you know, that seems good tech. That seems to work. And it's basically the energy. It's an idea that if you have like a plait of hair at the back of, come down off the back of your head, and it goes out like, you know, like that, between your shoulder blades, at the end of it is an energy point, and that's kind of where you have to feel it, and from, you know, then you work your intentions and all of your things through there or whatever, and you can kind of feel that, like I can feel it anyway. And the good thing about it gets you out of your head, focused out of your head, out of your kind of that kind of mental space, and come from a more body oriented thing. Other things, there's a lot of talk about what's the advantage in this. Always look for the advantage even in a negative thing, which is nothing new, but it's kind of presented in a nice way that you can, you know, you can go, well, I can work with that. And then this whole other thing of trying to be a center of, you know, where you focus on your day-to-day life, where you have the outside and you have the inside, and it's this kind of focus of trying to focus in between those two things, so you're aware of both things, which we never really are. We're either focused very inwardly, very outwardly, and driving is a good kind of a way of looking at that, because sometimes you can be very, you know, aware of the physicality of the world, the material world, when you're driving, and sometimes you can be in a completely different kind of universe, and, you know, you can't remember the last 20 minutes of driving and all that kind of stuff. So this kind of thing, this idea is to catch yourself between both of them, so that you're aware of both of them, and that seems to have a bit of power and stuff to it. So I really enjoyed it. There's a good appendix thing at the back going through all the different principles. There's a lot in it, and if you can get past the kind of, as I said, you know, the makeup and the dress of the whole thing, there's a lot in it. The chapters are quite short, and yeah, I would recommend it, with the caveat that it's a bit insane. Now, this one I absolutely loved, which is Plants of the Devil by Corinne Boyer. I came across this on the Rune Soup podcast for an old episode, and I really enjoyed the idea of it, which is looking at the different plants and the different kind of lore around them that tied them to the devil, or to the wild adversary, as it's labelled in this kind of thing. And it's really interesting because some of them you can really see, like the poisonous plants, where obviously, you'll tie that to the devil because, they poison people and do things wrong. But then you get into plants that seem to have no ostensible kind of evilness to it, and why they still get tied to the devil and different type of things. And it's really good in kind of presenting, because there is a thing in the New Age or in magic circles and all this thing that there's, everything is good in a sense. There's no kind of adversary. And, that even the left-hand path things that we look at, like Lucifer as a light bringer, as, a redeemer of sorts. And that, even the whole idea of Satan as Lord of this planet or Lord of this earth or whatever is, he's the good guy, and it's kind of everyone's good. In a way. There might be trickster. Trickster's probably, the furthest a lot of people will go. But there obviously is a kind of adversary. There is something that, and I mean, to kind of negate that or to push that away or pretend it's not there, I don't think it's helpful. And trying to think that we live in a, a completely benevolent universe, it's probably not a good idea, because we certainly don't, and our experience would, compound the fact that we don't. And this kind of all white light and happiness thing that we have, particularly in the New Age kind of thing, I don't think it's good, because there's obviously evil in the world, even if that's just a kind of human morality put on it. But there seems to be, and I mean, it's from even if it is, let's say, from just the standpoint of humanity, something has to be an archetypal representation of that. There has to be something that we can't just kind of discount and say isn't there. And which is one of my problems with the left-hand path type thing of just, it's transposing Lucifer over Jesus' body or Jesus' idea, and people, it's kind of, they're just changing names, just moving the table or the chairs around the table, not fundamentally having any different opinions. None of that's in the book, really, all of that thing. But it's just, there is this kind of element of nature isn't all good, and it's, some of it is out to get you, and that we have to be aware of this and how to interact with that and how to deal with that and how to approach all of those things. Loads of kind of lore, loads of research done into it, and loads of Irish stuff in it as well, which I thought was really good, because it's quite helpful to me, because an awful lot of the plants that are talked about are kind of indigenous to where I live, which is Ireland. So that gets, that I read that in like in 2 nights, because it was like usually I read about 5 or 6 books at the same time, but that was it. I just got into that and wanted to finish it. So it's one of those ones that you can't put down. So full marks from me. 2 other ones are Kindle books, so I don't have to show you them. One of them is Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files, which is Stormfront, the very first one. I wanted to get into a book like this, a fiction kind of magic book series, because I thought it'd be good, to get into a kind of get away from reading kind of factual books all the time, and more academic type books, or non-fiction books. And this seemed like a good fit, because, wizard, detective, and all of these things, what more could you want? I found it quite ordinary and quite kind of, not quite boring, but boring and not exciting. Very cliched, it's exactly what I thought it would be. It's like all the kind of, he's a detective, but he's like almost a down and out. His office is falling apart. His business isn't doing well. He's no money. The strange, alluring woman comes to his office and gets him to hires him. Like you literally a million times you've read this, seen this idea. There's it's like it doesn't even try to hide the fact that there's nothing original about that, other than he's a wizard. And as the story went on, and it's easy to read, and the chapters are good. I try to, I love being able to finish a chapter, to put the book down. I can't finish in the middle of a chapter because it just feels wrong. So the chapters are of decent length, and you get enough of the story to move along, without it being 50 pages or something, so it takes forever. But I just, by the end of it, didn't care. I didn't care about him. I didn't care about who had done it, and I didn't care about any of the supporting characters, or his universe, or whether he got his comeuppance or not, whether he got away with it or not. And I would like to know from people who love the Dresden Files, because you know they're obviously huge books and a huge series and people love them. What does it get better? It's like the first book just not great, but you have to get through it to get on to the second, you know, and get into the good ones? Or is that if I don't like the first one, I'm not going to like the rest of them? It's not a horrible book, or not. It's just, you know, fine. There's nothing in it that would got me excited, got me interested, or made me you know. By the end of it, it felt like homework to finish it, and I had, you know, really had the last couple of chapters, really had to force myself to stop skipping paragraphs and stuff like that. Just to, you know, it just felt like, oh, can we just get this finished? So let me know if they do get, you know, the series does get better and it's worth persevering with. Last book I want to talk about is The Cunning Man's Handbook by Jim Baker. Am I right? All these books will be in the show description. Anyway, really enjoyed this. This is the first kind of couple of chapters, which is more him just talking about, you know, not his experience, but his approach and what he thinks, and it kind of lays out stuff. It's really, really good. Then it gets into large excerpts from older books, different books, given whatever the topic the chapter is about, which is more kind of, I found a bit more referencey, and probably would have done better if I had the physical book, because that kind of stuff doesn't work so well, or for me anyway, on a Kindle. I like kind of, it's more that I would use when I'm going to do something, I'd be able to pull that book off the shelf and look, you know, oh, here's the references, here's the thing, here's what this guy did, here's what this old book said, all of that, rather than a Kindle thing doesn't work so well for me. And the excerpt thing kind of, I find it, well, it's brilliant, and you know, it's exactly what you want. I find sometimes that my mind kind of switches off and go, oh, this isn't a real part of the book, you know, this is just kind of you know, well, it is an excerpt, but it's like, but because there's so much of it in this book, it is the real part of the book. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's I found it that kind of, particularly if I wasn't that interested in whatever was being discussed, whatever, like the particular theme or topic of that chapter, I found it very hard to stay engaged with the excerpts. But overall, a really, really good book. Some great ideas, great tech, great things you could pull from that. From a Chaos Magic point of view, definitely there's a ton of stuff in it that is worth doing. I'd advise you get the actual book. Not a cheap book by any sense. I think it's about $40, something like that. So, you know, but you have to weigh that up. It is on Kindle Unlimited, so you can definitely have a flick through it if you're part of that. You know, if you're in Kindle Unlimited. So that's the 5 books. Overall, I would say out of them 5, Plants of the Devil was my favourite. The Tufte one is great, if you can get past the presentation, which may totally work for you. You know, might be just me that didn't warm to too much. The John Kehoe book, yeah, good as well. It's probably a great book to kind of for someone who's new to the whole thing. He has another book that I want to read, a more modern book that I will get to as well. And then yeah, the Dresden Files. Yeah, I was hoping that would be better. If they don't get any better, and could people suggest another similar type of book that might be good, a series of like a fictional magic type guy? It doesn't have to be detective, doesn't have to be, not fantasy really, because I want more kind of a modern day type thing, and if it can help it, if there can be no werewolves or vampires in it, that would be even better, because just something about it, I immediately switch off when I hear that there's vampires or werewolves in it. And this is from a guy who loves supernatural, so and who, you know, his entire teenage years was obsessed with the vampire Lestat. So I don't know, at some point I think Twilight just destroyed all kind of my love or interest in vampires. So yeah, that's 5 books that I recently read that I have no opinion on. That is not quite a review, because who am I to give a review about other people's artwork? So, good people of the internet, until our next adventure, be well.